Welcome back to the Tulsa World Sports Podcast featuring the one and only Eli Lederman and myself, Eric Bailey, talking everything Oklahoma athletics. Eli, say it with me, SEC.
Here we go.
SEC.
Time. Well, I guess it's not time, but we know the time.
We know what's going on. It's really funny because when we schedule these podcasts, it just depends on our schedule. A lot of times we're trying to get a schedule down and things happen, and you couldn't ask for a better setup for a podcast this week. It comes right after the SEC announcement. Usually we record this on Wednesday, so it worked out well. We're doing this on a Friday, and it comes just less than 24 hours after Oklahoma announces it is joining the SEC in 2024, joining Texas with that move. And it's something I think a lot of Oklahoma fans are excited about.
Yeah, I mean, this, I guess, in some ways has been a long time coming ever since, July 2021, when very first inkling that that this was coming, that OU and Texas were headed to the SEC. That question after that was when. We know that contractually that grant of rights kept OU and Texas here till 2025. Publicly, that was, what we heard, whether it was Joe Castiglione or Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark, was that was the date until something changed. But we also know behind closed doors that there was a lot of momentum and drive, sounds like, from OU and Texas and the Big 12. I think kind of we've talked, I think, in the past about an unhappy marriage, right? I think for all involved, maybe except for the TV partners, an early exit was the desired outcome. That's where they got. But the push there had to come from, an agreement with all the involved parties. And we were on here last week talking about how the reporting out there nationally was that there was momentum, but that the TV contracts were the issue. And that at the time, about a week ago, sounded like it was going to keep OU and Texas here until 2025. But then a week later, here we are talking about an agreement that's going to see OU and Texas forfeit something like a combined $100 million in future revenues and distribution. Clearly they figured out a way to make, I think it was Fox really was the television network that was going to have its contract impacted. They've been made whole somehow, and here we are now staring down OU and Texas headed to the SEC in 2024.
Eli, you put it perfectly into words last week when me and you were just talking on our own. What was the analogy you said? It's like
it's like a breakup.
Yeah,
you got to finish the lease, and that's what this was. And at times this felt similarly icy and awkward, didn't it?
It really did. I mean, it goes back to last week when the schedule came out, and Oklahoma and Texas made no mention on their website of the 2023 football schedule at all. No press releases or anything like that. There was a lot of awkwardness. And this goes back to, like you said, this goes back to last year when the announcement was made that the schools were making this move. Bob Bowlesby was the then commissioner. And, weeks before Oklahoma and Texas, the news broke that they were going to depart for the SEC. Bob Bowlesby felt like the Big 12 was in a position of strength, really felt confident. And then weeks later, he was caught off guard by this. And we've had this discussion so many times about when it was going to happen. You mentioned Joe Castiglione. Every time we talked to him on the record, even off the record, we just got, hey, is it really going to be 2025? And he never wavered from that. Of course, contractually, he has to say 2025. But, you'd wonder, are you trying to get out in 2024? There was never any mention of that. He really stuck to his guns, simply because, he couldn't put himself out there. But it was interesting that this all came together just a couple of weeks after it seemed like this was doomed. We saw some national reports a couple of weeks ago, like you said, where everyone thought that, Oklahoma was going to be in the SEC through 25. So this was really interesting how this has come to fruition.
Yeah, and it kind of sparked some questions. You mentioned Bob Bowlesby. You wonder that if he were still in this job, would it be any different? I don't know. You wonder, the reasons why Oklahoma and Texas were so eager to get out. I mean, maybe it is as simple, just wanting to get onto that next thing, get out of that, the lease and the whole thing. But the other questions there are, is it could OU have used the extra year? There's going to be a big undertaking heading to the SEC, far beyond football. I know this is largely a football conversation, and it should be, because we're not here because of any other sport but football. That's what's driven this. But there's facilities, there's hiring, there's a lot of stuff OU's got to do on top of getting its football program SEC ready, and now they've got one less year to do it. So that maybe, as we project forward, could be a lingering question. But there's certainly a lot of interesting around this, and I think a lot for us still to find out in terms of how this happened, why there was this push for 2024. Again, maybe it's really simple of just get to your final destination. But it's all developed fast as a lot of this has, and now we'll see where we go from here.
You're exactly right, Eli. I mean, that's the thing. We're going to find out a lot in the next upcoming days, weeks, and months about how this all came together as this moves on. And you're right. This has a lot of, you see a lot of positives for Oklahoma. You see a lot of positives for Texas in this movement. The Big 12 too. I mean, this is a conference that could go after expansion and could go after some other schools. And I think the Big 12 is going to grow. I've been impressed with what they've been doing and putting together in terms of being aggressive with both their TV contract and also it sounds like expansion too. So we'll see what happens with the Big 12. Moving forward for Oklahoma, this is really going to be interesting because Oklahoma fans have been waiting for kind of new blood to come to the football stadiums. You're going to see some SEC schools coming on in conference games. I mean, how much fun is it going to be to see a Georgia, Florida, even in Arkansas coming to Norman and playing football? I think this is going to rejuvenate everything, this fan base. They're excited about the move, but it does go beyond football. I think that's the big thing. You mentioned that. I think we see softball, the facilities at softball are going to be, par with what the SEC is doing. But then baseball, there needs to be some upgrades with the facilities in baseball. All you have to do is look toward Fayetteville and see what their facilities are like. And it's amazing. It's night and day between what Arkansas has and Oklahoma has. That being said, Oklahoma can win at baseball because you look at what they did last year. They were just 2 wins from a national championship. So the potential is there. But you're right. You do have to get everything in order, get your house in order for this movement. I mean, in basketball, men's basketball, you need it's going to be an easier league. That's for sure. And I say easier. It's all relative. I mean, it's still going to be tough. It's tough to win games always. But the Big 12 is a monster this year. So, please, SEC fans, don't hate me already because I'm saying the SEC is easier basketball league. I'm not saying that.
You're not making fast friends here, Eric.
Yeah, I know.
Like me with the UCF folks. They don't like me.
I will say this. My TV right now is on the SEC network. I'm going to learn that. I'm going to start learning everything on the SEC network on ESPN. So we'll get that done. But you're right, Eli. There's a lot of things that have to happen between now and 24. And that the timeline, it's moving. Everything's looking forward now. I mean, in a couple months, we may be looking at an SEC OU schedule for 2024. Are they going to play 8 conference games? Are they going to play 9 conference games? Is Oklahoma going to have regular games with Texas, which I'd almost think they'd have to figure out a way to play that Texas game. Who else are going to be permanent opponents? I mean, will A&M, will Arkansas, Missouri? I've seen all kinds of things out there, a lot of projections, and that's going to be part of the next SEC spring meetings are going to be so important for us to watch in terms of scheduling, Eli, because we're going to figure out what they're going to do in this league and how they're going to schedule football.
Yeah, and I mean, as it relates OU football, this does speed things up. If it had been 2025, we would have been talking about OU going to the SEC in year 4 with Brent Venables. Year 3, tell me if I've got my math right here. I think it would have been that first season would have been the 3rd season so 4th year for Brent Venables, 3rd season for this incoming class. Jackson Arnold, Peyton Bowen, all them. Now you move all that up a year. And I see you doing the math with your eyes. I think I'm.
I am. I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah.
No. So yeah, that would have been year 3, and if we're really projecting out here, and that's exactly what we're doing. You're talking about year 2 starter Jackson Arnold, and maybe year 2 or 3 contributor from some of those guys on the defense. Now that's sped up. I mean, I think realistically, you could be looking at Jackson Arnold's your first year, likely without Dylan Gabriel as in the SEC. Does that mean something different now? Does the ability to have stacked one more recruiting class that you would have gotten hanging around another year? Those are going to be tangible impacts. The acceleration is there, and getting this program intact. And I think they're well on their way. We saw what they did in this recruiting class and the momentum they've got going. But from a team that finished 6 and 7 last year, year 1 under Brent Venables, the SEC is now coming fast, and there's going to have to be a lot of improvement and infrastructure all around it to get ready just for that jump itself.
You mentioned recruiting. It's going to be so interesting too. When you think about it, Oklahoma's always been able to sell that, Brent Venables could go in a house, say, we're going to join the SEC. Well, now he has a date. Now he has a timeline. Now he can tell his recruits that this is when we're making the move. And I think you did see some of the benefits of the SEC move in recruiting this past year. I think you'll see it even more because he knows when he can tell these players, these prospects, when they're going to start playing football in the SEC. So I think that we'll see so many things are impacted. You're right. Everything's spiraling out. It's like a spider web. We're starting to see everything, how it's going to go out and everything too. So that's going to be really, really interesting to watch. I'm excited. I texted an OU administrator yesterday saying this is, I don't know. It invigorates me. It really does. I don't know if I could wait and see if 2025. I don't know if I could have waited until 2025, because it's going to be fun to follow the SEC schools, what's going to happen in the conference. I mean, I think Oklahoma fans are really going to keep a close eye to conference standings in the SEC this coming season too, because they want to see what's going on. So it's just going to be a lot of fun, Eli. I'm excited about it.
I think it sets up, yeah, in terms of if it accelerates things for, OU football and OU and Texas, it accelerates things for all of us. And it's going to make for, I think, a really exciting next, 18 months, 2 years where you're going to have all the lasts of the Big 12. I mean, I'm sure, but I don't think we can overstate enough what I'm sure will be surrounding that Bedlam game, November 4th in Stillwater, the very last one as far as we're concerned for quite some time, and all that. All those last runs through the Big 12 will be something. But then on the horizon, like you said, it's going to be time to start looking at those SEC standings and watching those games. It's going to be time for us to go to SEC media days, I think, and get ourselves ingratiated with the SEC crowd. So there's a lot of exciting stuff ahead, and I think this is what the move in July of 2021 promised was excitement. Was obviously this move and all it's going to bring, and now we're just along for the ride.
And you're right. There'll be a lot of farewells. What I do hate is, Oklahoma has played football against, and we're going to talk about Bedlam a lot in the next, year, but I'm going to hate seeing those series, with Kansas, with Kansas State, with Iowa State, these schools that were former Big 8 schools that Oklahoma's severing ties with. It's going to be tough seeing those schools because there's the history between those schools. And what will these farewell tours be like? I think we'll hear a lot of SEC chants, especially if the team's beaten OU. But then we'll hear some SEC chants from OU fans. In years past, when OU fans would beat like an Auburn in the Sugar Bowl, I still remember that in the 2016 season, the SEC chants were loud, and it was kind of mocking the league. Well, now I think if Oklahoma's beaten someone in the league this coming year, we're going to hear SEC chants just from OU fans talking about their next move.
When you say something so many times that it just loses all meaning, that's what the SEC chant, because we've heard it from all sides now. I've heard OU fans chant it at Alabama, the basketball game. I've heard it chanted against OU. The chant has lost all meaning now. And I guess it's all about the context, but it's quite funny. You're exactly right.
And finally, the final top thing I have, the one series I'm looking forward about the SEC move. We talked about all these schools. I'm looking for OU Arkansas. We saw some of that rivalry in basketball the past 2 years. They played in the BOK Center and had 2 exciting games. And football, they haven't played, I think, since the Cotton Bowl in the 2001 season. And that was, 20 years ago. These schools are just a couple hours drive from each other. I don't know why they haven't played each other in the past. I'm really looking forward to that OU Arkansas rivalry heating up and playing, especially in football, playing each other.
What do you think? Neutral site? Arkansas, Oklahoma at Tulsa Union High School. What do we think?
Union High School, Broken Arrow High School, Wassel High School. Hey, let's just play it in Tulsa. I'd love that. It's the midway point. Yeah, let's see what happens. So Eli and I will have a lot more SEC talk as the weeks go on. This is really, really fresh, and I think there'll be a lot of news develop as the weeks go on. So we're looking forward to that. And like the fans, we're prepping ourselves. So basketball. Let's move on to OU basketball. Big game tomorrow, and boy, the Sooners really look good at Baylor. I mean, it was a closer game than years past. I know Porter Moser doesn't want moral victories, but I think they played better, and now they got a big one come to Lloyd Noble Center on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, after this all probably has to start with the West Virginia beatdown, because the Sooners, we recorded last week, and then the Sooners went to Morgantown and got smoked in a week that really could have been transformative for the Sooners. Was in fact the opposite, because they beat Alabama. And they could have, in terms of relative soft spots in the schedule, Oklahoma State and West Virginia marked an opportunity there. It could have been 3 straight wins, or even if they got 2 of the 3. It was not the week, I think, that the Sooners needed. And it ended with just a smackdown in Morgantown. And afterward, Porter Moser basically said, this isn't going to be a lineup change. It's not going to be one tweak. We've got to get back to the grit that we had played with, and that is supposed to define this team. And I think you saw some of that at Baylor. It was a much more competitive game than either of the last 2. Really going into Baylor, I think OU had played 4 straight, non-competitive halves in terms of the score, where they just were really never in it. So it was an improvement there, but as you said, moral victories in February, when you're really on the fringes as is, are only going to get you so far. Because the Sooners now 3 wins in 2023. They've lost 7 of their last 8 Big 12 games, and 5 of those last 6 have come by 10 points or more. And so it was an encouraging turnaround in one regard, and obviously, you know, what would a 40-point loss at Baylor have signaled in terms of where this team is at? But on the whole, you know, it's still not trending well, and there's bright spots in Joe Bamisile and Otega Owe, and the fact that grit that Florida Wizard spoke about so much before they went down to Waco, it was back, but here we are, and that tournament contention looks further and further away, and all you've got next are Kansas and Kansas State at home.
Yeah, and I think the key is everyone, you're playing to March now. You're playing for that trip to Kansas City. You want to, you know, but the thing is, what Oklahoma team's going to show up, and you know, you want to be peaking at the end of the season. There's still time. I don't know what's going to happen. You're right. It's going to be the Sunflower State schools are going to be. It's going to be tough against those 2 schools. So we'll see what happens. Women's basketball, second place in the Big 12, playing really well. I think a big win at Baylor this week. They were down 12 with 4.5 to play. Came back, forced overtime, scored 5 points in like a 6-second span. Won in overtime in Waco, and they're really playing well. I think they're playing for a chance to host. They're trying to get that 4 seed. There's still some work to be done, but I've been impressed with the way Jenny Baranchek's teams have played. They got a big one against Kansas State on Sunday. Kansas State's playing well, and Kansas State is led by Gabby Gregory, OU transfer. She was on the Sooners roster last year, Holland Hall graduate. Now she's one of the best players in the league. She's having a heck of a year. Good for Gabby. Great, you know, a good kid. I enjoyed talking to her in the limited times we had an opportunity to talk to her. She dealt with some health issues at OU and came back and just found a new home in Manhattan, playing really well. But Oklahoma, as they hit the second stretch of the season, they're really going to have to, you know, try to get to that 4 spot. I mean, there's still some big games on the schedule. But they're really playing well. They're still they're healthy. You know, knock on wood. I know Jenny Baranchek's going to want me to knock on wood by saying that they've been healthy for the most part, remained healthy. So it's been a lot of fun watching this team. And there's only a couple more times left to see Maddie Williams, Taylor Robertson, and Anna Lunusa play at home. So I think that's going to be key too. Yeah,
they've got still some really big ones on the schedule. I think no bigger than Texas coming in on which date is that? It's like the 25th. They're coming to Norman. That's a big one, and I think it's about, you know, we talk about the OU men having to kind of now build from a pretty significant deficit. For the OU women, if they're chasing that 4 seed, a top 4 seed, going into Kansas City, it's about banking wins now and putting together as good a case as possible, so that when they go to Kansas City, maybe they can bolster it with, you know, a few more wins over quality conference opponents. But what they do in these next few weeks and being able to build for them, I guess, you know, some reinforcement on the resumes is huge, and they've got the schedule and they've got the team to certainly do it.
2 more things I want to ask. First of all, OU softball opened the season yesterday.
Unbelievable.
2-0. Everyone expected them to be 2-0, of course. I don't think it's the way that everyone thought they'd be 2-0 then, though they needed a 1-0 extra inning game against Liberty to finish off a sweep. And the offense, I think so much expectation of the offense, they struggled. And they're playing in Irvine, California, in the Mark Campbell Invitational. They struggled offensively, but as much as they struggled offensively, Jordy Ball and Nicole May threw shutouts. And Nicole May, what a game! 10 strikeouts in 8 innings, only allowed 4 hits in the nightcap against Liberty. And this is a good Liberty team. They're the preseason favorites in the Atlantic Sun Conference. Good softball is good softball, and this Liberty team's a really good team. So it was a good win for the Sooners, and I think it was a way for them to step back and take a look at themselves and say, okay, season started. You know, there's a lot of the ways they want to improve, and I think yesterday the way that they played, it's kind of an awakening to, okay, you got to play well every time you go out and play.
And where do they go from here now, Eric?
They play tonight against Stanford, Friday night, Stanford, 9:30 Central Time. So it'll be another late night. And then I think they got a game tomorrow at 9. I can't remember who they play tomorrow at 9. But yeah, they're out there and they're going to be favorites. So here's the thing: if they go 5-0 this week, Patty Gasso will win 1,400. It'll be her 1,400th career win. If they go 5-0 this weekend, it'll be the program's 1900th career win. So that's milestones this weekend. But if you ask Patty Gasso and ask this team, it's only one game at a time. They're not going to look too much forward about numbers. They just want to win against Stanford on Saturday night. Eli, you got a busy Saturday. You got basketball, Kansas game, and then baseball. We're just a week away from baseball.
It's hard to believe, when you said that softball was back and obviously the games were last night, it's really hard to believe that the diamond sports are here. They seem to come earlier every year, although I think the calendar would tell you it's about the same. But yeah, we've got tomorrow's OU Baseball Media Day, talking about obviously the reigning national runner-ups and a really new look team for Skip Johnson. It's not the same group. They lost a testament to how good they were last year, where all the guys who got drafted and are now off in the pros. But they've had a lot to replenish. They're confident. I think there's, for the returning guys and for Skip Johnson, I'm sure some confidence in what they did last year, that you don't need to be playing your best baseball in February or March. It's about what you do in the latter part of the season. And so we'll see. It'll be exciting to kind of get in front of this team in bulk for the first time and to see what they're about, see who they've got. And I'll have a whole lot more to report back after tomorrow, but we're all headed now toward that February 17th opener against Cal Baptist, who we've highlighted on the podcast before. And they'll be going from there. It's that one starts at home, and then they hit the road for, actually they're home for most of February. Might be some cold baseball here in Norman. We'll see.
Looking forward to Skip Johnson. Love, one of my favorite interviews. Great guy. Just so much fun. So Eli, it's going to be fun watching some baseball this year. I think that'll do it from today. And, by this time we talk next week. Oh, last thing, one more thing. Super Bowl prediction. Who's going to win? A lot of, I wrote a story on Barry Switzer's $28,000 post-game party after the Cowboys won, and some other thoughts of OU memories. You're working on a Jalen Hurts feature. 8 players with OU ties in this game. If we include Grant Calcaterra, who transferred to SMU, there's 8 Sooners in this. So ton of OU players in this game. Philadelphia, Kansas City. Who's your win? Who's going to win?
Hold on. I was told Jalen Hurts was an Alabama player.
He's an SEC player now. We can just
say
that.
There you go. God.
We'll just say that.
I'd say my overall stance on that is it's an absolutely ridiculous debate. He played for both schools, so he's a player for both schools. And I'm riding with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, though. I just think they've got too much talent. I mean, to say that, and we're talking about he's going against the NFL MVP and Pat Mahomes, but I'll take Hurts and the Eagles. How about you?
I'm going to go with the Eagles too, and I have a lot of friends who are Kansas City fans, but I'm going to go with the Eagles. I just want to know Mahomes. What's his health like? What's he going to be like? He's had a couple of weeks to kind of get well, but it's still going to be tough. And the key is, Jalen Hurts, what kind of game he's going to have, and he's shown it every time he goes out there. Just really, really good. Takes care of the football. That running ability we saw at Oklahoma, it's translated into the NFL. So I'm going with Philadelphia. But I think it's going to be a good game. That'll be the interesting thing. So, all right, next week we'll probably have more SEC news to talk about. I think things will happen between now and next week, so we'll talk about that. Just be sure and read Eli and my work, TulsaWorld.com. We're going to cover everything from all the sports, from football to all the spring sports. And as always, you can find all of our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever platform you use. Thanks so much for listening, watching our Tulsa World podcast featuring OU Athletics.